Hello and Privyet. Welcome back, Tubers and Connoisseurs of fine Imperial and Soviet Russian militaria. Welcome back to another episode from CollectRussia.com. We have our friend here today, once again, Professor Igor Moiseyev.
Professor.
What do we have today, sir?
We have a really interesting subject to discuss, and it will be, for today, Lenin Prize. Lenin Prize is one of the least understood Soviet awards, and at the same time, one of the most important ones. The reason I'm saying that it's little understood is because there was practically nothing published about it in English language literature for sure, and very little in even Russian language literature. Even after the collapse of the Soviet Union, not to speak of what happened before, it was practically shrouded in mystery. Nobody really knew what it was, except for it was extremely important. And I'll try to explain to our collector friends what it is, what's the meaning of it, what kind of benefits it brought, what kind of history it had. And it had a very interesting history, sort of non-linear. It wasn't simply like most of the medals awarded for a specific thing, just one thing, or issued just once. It actually had a very interesting series of twists and turns. It was instituted, abolished, then instituted again. So there is a bit of an interesting, curious development with it. We will also be discussing how it's made, and it's a very well-made piece as awards go. It's actually made in 23 karat gold, believe it or not. It's always serial numbered. It has some components in it that need to be understood, because there are variations of this medal. And of course, what variation it is greatly affects the price. And of course, there are some lavish and very interesting documents that accompanied the medal. And we will have some examples today of those. And lastly, we will discuss prices, how prices changed over the years that I've been in business, and that, as you know, quite a few years. And hopefully this information will help our collectors community to understand this award and maybe develop more interest in it. And hopefully someone may want to add one to the collection already. This will be our subject, and to give you some examples of what actually this medal looks like, here's what we have here. And Jenna, just to introduce the medal, just to show what I'm talking about here, the actual medal looks like this.
Wow.
No matter when and to whom it was issued, it always has the same look from the front.
Beautiful, beautiful.
However, the back tells a different story. There is where we see the serial number, and every one of these medals was serial numbered. We'll talk about it some more. You will also notice that it has a very complex suspension device, which is unlike practically any other Soviet award. It had its own very special design for the suspension, and those suspensions differed, and this is what makes medal more or less scarce. We'll discuss that as well. But let me go back a little bit and say that there was no medal at all initially. When the Lenin Prize was conceived in 1925, soon after Lenin's death, it was not a medal at all. It was initially a reward, just like Nobel Prize, and it has pretty much the same idea of rewarding young talent, people that were up and coming, people that were not necessarily already established as authors of books or screenwriters or inventors or scientists, those who just published their first significant work that's very promising, very groundbreaking, to give them a certain amount of money to make it easier for them, and also to show to everybody that look, this kind of effort, extraordinary effort and extraordinary talent is going to be rewarded in the Soviet Union. One thing that people also don't know about Lenin Prize is that not only it was the monetary reward other than anything else, it was also financed with Lenin's published works. So Of course, a lot of Lenin's books were obligatory. They were part of the curriculum in schools and colleges. Every library had full set of Lenin's works. Many foreign countries had those publications, and therefore there was a lot of royalty coming to now deceased Lenin, and they decided that this is how the Soviet government is going to use this royalty, this proceeds. Lenin Prize existed as a purely monetary reward from 1925 until 1936. In 1936, interesting thing happened. For some reason, it was phased out. And you could argue that Stalin's cult of personality was at that point coming to its peak. He finally eclipsed everybody else. All the other so-called classics of Marxism, Leninism, such as Lenin himself or Marx or Engels, took a kind of second fiddle to the absolute genius who was the current leader, of course. And therefore, it was probably felt that Lenin Prize was no longer needed to propagate Lenin's ideas, that Stalin's ideas are perhaps more important. And lo and behold, in 1939, just in time for the 60th anniversary of Stalin's birth, a new award was instituted that was called now Stalin Prize. Nothing was mentioned about Lenin Prize. It just didn't exist anymore. It was never issued. For the first couple of years, the actual reward was not given out, probably because they needed to work out all the kinks to figure out how many to award. And that was a pretty fluid situation because, again, the reward was purely monetary and it was financed with now Stalin's published work. Now, Stalin didn't need any money coming to him from his publications. Well, guess what? He had the entire Soviet Union in his pocket. He was the owner, undisputed dictator of hundreds of millions of people. And about 1/6 of the land mass of the planet. Everything was within his reach, and he could appear very modest on camera, wearing the same plain military-style suit and boots. In reality, he led a pretty lavish lifestyle with wine and all kinds of banquets and all kinds of fabulous dishes prepared for him by his personal chefs, of course, but nobody knew about that. So it was easy for him to show that he is such an altruist and he doesn't need any money for himself. Everything goes to the people, and one way to do it right, to have a good purpose for this money, was to reward young talent. So Stalin Prize initially was just that. Later, an interesting thing happened. Around 1940, when they actually made the decision of who to award, and the very first of those decisions were published in 1941, they kind of came up with the idea that maybe now we need to also show a special type of appreciation to anybody who achieved this unbelievable honor of getting Stalin Prize. And they came up with so-called large certificate or diploma of the Stalin Prize winner. And you can tell just how lavish it is. It's wrapped in leather. It has portraits in high relief of Stalin and Lenin, all this gold-impressed writing on the cover, very beautifully decorated on the inside. It would say the year for which the prize was awarded. It would say what class it is. This happens to be first, highest class. Stalin's portrait, of course. Names of every person who received Stalin Prize for this particular project. Oftentimes, they would award a group of people rather than just one for working on the same project. It could be, for example, like in this case, a cinematographic picture, a movie. And it says that first class was awarded on 26 January 1946 to such and such people. It names position of each one of these people. It's a group of about 6 individuals. And it also mentions who in particular got this particular prize, this particular diploma. Each of these people would share the monetary reward. They would get a fraction of it, which was still a very considerable amount of money. But they each would receive a diploma. And at that time, there was not yet a medal for Stalin Prize winner. And of course, not a medal for Lenin Prize winner. That wasn't even issued at that point. And that was the case for quite a few years. Initially, as I said, just the large document. Then in 1943, already during the war, they realized that not only it's important that the person would have such a beautiful document at home, but also it was necessary for such a highly distinguished individual to have a smaller certificate, so-called small document or pocket-size document, also beautifully decorated, that would be issued to every Stalin Prize winner. Again, at that point, not yet a medal. The medal was practically an afterthought. They thought of it in 1943-44. There was even a project that was approved. However, the actual medals were never issued. And possible explanation for that there was a hiatus in the issuance of the Stalin Prizes during 1944-45, during the what Russians called Patriotic War, the last 2 years of the Second World War. You may ask why. And we have to go again a little bit back into the past and see how this idea with the monetary reward developed. Initially, there was a set number of Stalin Prize winners, and majority of the rewards were for outstanding achievements in science or extraordinary inventions. And not to dismiss it, not to score its performance, not to misunderstand its performance, there was a special category for military science. So quite a few were, from the very beginning, given for military science. It just goes to show how militarized the whole society was. To give you an idea, in the first issue of Stalin Prize that happened in 1941, and it encompassed previous years, so the gap years between actual abolition of the Lenin Prize in 1937 and until the first time that Stalin Prize was issued, for all the previous years, there was something like 4 prizes for literature, very, very limited number. 16 prizes given out for extraordinary work of art. For inventions, there were quite a few more. Of the first class, there were 10. Of the second class, 20. Of the third class, 30. So in total, 60 were for inventions. Again, Soviet Union had to develop its industry. Inventions were extremely important. Better industry, better productivity, better weapons, ultimately. There were quite a few awarded for military science, as I mentioned. Later, as Stalin's proceeds from published work kept coming, pouring in, there were more prizes established, larger number were given out with each passing year, and at the end, there was something like thousands issued each year for various things, and categories also expanded. So 42, 43 Stalin Prizes are still being awarded, but a curious thing happened. Most of the people, or practically all, who received Stalin Prize in those war years felt it necessary to donate all the money to war industry. It was a matter of special pride for people to finance, for example, a construction of a tank. And the tank would be named in honor of such a person. So there were tanks that would carry on their side T-34 tank that would say, collective farmer such and such, who donated all his life savings to build this war machine. Same thing with Stalin Prize winners. They felt obligated now to donate all the money. So there was really no point to even issuing a Stalin Prize, since all the money was anyway donated, and in no way it would help this young talent to get by, because this young talent felt under pressure, peer pressure, you can say it, to give it all away. So there was a break in the issuance, and then in 46 they started again. They awarded some in 1946 for the past years, for 1944, 45, whatever achievements happened during those years. And then there was another issue again in 1946, just for the year of 1946. So it was pretty prodigious, pretty fruitful year as far as the number of Stalin Prizes awarded. So it's not uncommon actually to see a 1946 date. And it went on and on up until Stalin's death. And for another couple of years, it was still being issued, but on a very reduced, in very reduced numbers. And then Stalin was somehow not popular anymore. Again, a curious thing happened, just like these Lenin Prizes before. Stalin's cult of personality became very dangerous to Kremlin leaders themselves. And when Khrushchev came to power, finally solidified it in the late 50s, he denounced Stalin, a thing that would be absolutely unthinkable. Before, at the Congress of the Communist Party, anything associated with Stalin became far less popular, and eventually that led to not only abolition of Stalin Prize, but also to a very curious, typically Soviet thing of replacement of Stalin Prize. And how they did that? Well, they came up with a totally new award that was now called State Prize, that never existed before. And here's an example of one of them with a document that was introduced just specifically to replace Stalin Prize. It was often the case that people who were awarded would be in public view very much. And it was a matter of special pride. And many of them were awarded more than once. For example, the famous builder of Soviet airplanes, Ilyushin, famous airplane designer, he was awarded 4 times with the first class and 3 times with the second class. And guess what? He was expected to wear his awards on public occasions. Now, if somebody is wearing an award with Stalin's profile that is so conspicuous here, as you can see, this is not a very good thing, because Stalin is almost a non-person now. And because of that, they needed to find a solution. And the solution was very simple. Why don't we replace it with a newly coined State Prize, which does not have any profile of any Soviet leader, and it has just State Prize on the back. It does say what class, and this class would correspond now with the original class of the Stalin Prize award, only it wouldn't say Stalin Prize, of course. You will notice a very interesting thing about State Prize that I must mention. You will notice that there is a serial number, which is very typical for any high-end Soviet decoration, to have a serial number on the reverse, on the back. Here we have it, 1168 or 66. Why wasn't there a serial number on a Stalin Prize? Well, that has to do with the fact that award came after the fact, after the prize was already issued to very many people. And because of that, it would be practically impossible to issue serial numbered medals to match the documents. And it would be a bureaucratic nightmare. Probably they realized that, and therefore the medal that only came up in 1945 for the first time, Stalin Prize medal, only has the year and the level, the class of the award on its reverse. Here, for example, it says second class 1942. So this individual received the award in 1942. Who that individual was, we don't know. It can be anybody who received the second class in 1942. Well, 1942, of course, is a war year, makes it very interesting, far less common than the post-war awards. And also, as I mentioned, there were fewer of them issued during the war by far than later on. Because each year the number expanded for the Stalin Prize. Same thing here. Here we have third class in bronze from 1942, and there is no serial number. These state prizes, because they all appeared at the same time in 1962, and it was a long process that took several years. All of them were replacements, but there they could actually put a serial number and have everybody accountable for what particular number one got. And I will show you a document for one of this. And this one, actually, I have to tell you the story about this particular medal. I think you find it fascinating. This person was awarded with what it says in the document, with State Prize of the first class in 1947. Well, guess what? This is a typical Soviet rewriting of history. There was no such thing as State Prize in 1947. Yet it says, awarded with State Prize in 1947. The document was only issued in 1962, right during the process when these exchanges took place. And by the way, that explains why Stalin Prizes are quite scarce, especially earlier years, because most of the people who received them were expected to exchange them for the new State Prize, while Stalin Prize medals and documents too were taken away and invariably destroyed. Nothing, this mentioning of Stalin, needed to exist anymore. This one is a very interesting case, as I mentioned, because if you look at the name of the person who received it, and the name is Georgian Balanchivadze, Andrei Militonovich, may not sound familiar to most people in the West, except for if you look at the beginning of the name, Balanchi. Well, Balanchin is sort of a changed name of a famous ballet dancer and more famous ballet director, Balanchin, who is considered the founder of American ballet. This fellow here was his brother. He was a composer, and while Balanchin was performing in France and suffered an accident, he broke his leg, he couldn't dance anymore, he got persuaded by his friends to stay in order to return to the Soviet Union, which was probably a very wise decision, and he became a famous director eventually in the United States. While his brother stayed in the Soviet Union, he was very talented. He came from a very prominent family of musicians, and he was a composer. And this prize, Stalin Prize, was awarded to him for concerto for fortepiano with orchestra, it says here, in 1947. Of course, the two brothers were never allowed to meet for most of their life. It was much after Stalin's death that Andrei Balanchin was actually permitted to travel abroad just once for a specific purpose of meeting his brother, and that was the only time that the two met. So it's an interesting story here, and it's a fairly prominent individual, and of course it's interesting that the founder of American Ballet, School of American Ballet, was his brother.
Oh, an absolute museum piece.
I think so. I think so. It's much more than just... There's never such a thing as a regular State or Stalin Prize. They were all very prominent, but some are just more famous and interesting than others. Now, returning to Stalin and State Prize, and finally to our subject of today's discussion, which is Lenin Prize. At the same time as Stalin Prizes were replaced and State Prize was issued, it was understood that it's important to replace Stalin Prize permanently with something of equal importance. And that was the newly coined Lenin Prize. The old idea of Lenin Prize was resurrected, and Lenin Prize now took place of Stalin Prize. State Prize initially, as I mentioned, was in 3 classes. Later, it became a somewhat lesser award that was only issued in 1 class, and it was all gold. Looked similar to what you see here, but only 1 class would exist, and it would be issued for lesser achievements, and mostly in technology, rarely for arts or literature, whereas the Lenin Prize was the most important award. And unlike Stalin Prize that could be awarded numerous times to the same individual, Lenin Prize could be awarded just once in a lifetime. And again, who was awarded? Mostly scientists, very often people who worked on Soviet secret weapons programs. And it's curious to note that the father of Soviet nuclear bomb, Kurchatov, who later became very famous already after his death, but was very much undercover and working in secrecy. But the person who is considered to be the father of Soviet nuclear bomb, he was awarded with Stalin Prize first class, one of the last, when it was being phased out. And guess who received the very first Lenin Prize of all of them, with serial number 01.
Wow, who's that?
Kurchatov, the same fellow. Again, for working on Soviet nukes.
Wow.
So nukes were important, of course. And again, it was just once in a lifetime that Lenin Prize could be awarded, unlike Stalin Prize. And here's one example. Here we have a guy who is wearing a Stalin Prize in the picture. And you can see that there are 2 of them. He's wearing 2 Stalin Prizes. And it would be impossible with Lenin Prize. So Lenin Prize initially awarded some 50 plus times a year. And initially it was a pretty scarce award anyway, but then the requirements became even tougher. And in the last decades, when it was issued, there were only 30 awarded semi-annually. So instead of being awarded on a mass scale like Stalin Prize, it became a very, very exclusive award. And of course, it brought enormous privileges. The fact that someone would have the money, which was still the case, there would still be a good sum of money issued with every medal. And just like before, people could share the reward, and it would still be a considerable sum. But then each one would receive the document, each one would receive a medal, and it was an enormous recognition. It would open all kinds of doors. It would become a huge career advancement. And the title that it brought, there was a special title, just like title of Hero of the Soviet Union. There was a title of laureate, winner of the Lenin Prize. It would always be associated with the name of the person. So it was no longer just a regular scientist or a regular author or a regular movie director or a regular actor. It would be Lenin Prize winner, a huge recognition for life. Every person whose biography would be published, it will be mentioned in that biography that not just a regular guy, a regular girl, it's a winner of Lenin Prize. Huge deal. And now, because it was issued so sparingly, in total, from the moment when it was introduced in 1956 to the point when it was abolished with the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, there were only some 4,000 ever issued, which is, for the country this large, is not a large number. It's not a huge number. There's one important additional note to make about it. Unlike many other awards, Lenin Prize would bring enormous advancement. And people who were awarded with it, even their descendants, even their heirs, even in their second or third generation, would typically be elevated among Soviet people, among the rest of the population. They would have better access to education. They would usually live in a capital city more often than not. They would have all kinds of benefits simply because of this tremendous breakthrough that their grandfather or grandmother made, being awarded with Lenin Prize. And therefore, they're very rarely in need to sell their decorations. You rarely hear of people of that stature selling awards of their grandmother. They were far, far better off than most. And even in the worst times, after immediate collapse of the Soviet Union, when the Russian economy was pretty much in ruins in the early 90s, where you could afford to maybe live in Moscow for $2 for an entire day and dine in the best restaurants and stay in the best hotel, and it would still cost you a couple of dollars at most. Even at that time, they would be reluctant to sell their medals and often had means of getting by, whereas the rest of our population, was not so lucky. Even people awarded with an Order of Lenin, there were 400,000 of them issued, often would just sell their Order of Lenin for scrap. Collector's market did not exist yet. And therefore, it was commonplace that awards were sold for scrap or just simply sold. Mm-hmm. And as a result, they are on the market in mass.
Wow.
Whereas Lenin Prize is not so. And again, you're comparing 400,000 of Order of Lenin, which is considered the highest Soviet decoration, with just about 4,000, fewer actually, of the Lenin Prize. The highest serial number I've ever handled was somewhere in 3,500 range.
Wow.
And they can be much lower than that, but not much higher than that. So this is briefly what I had to say about Lenin Prize. Of course, one thing that came with it was a very lavish document, just like Stalin Prize, or maybe just a notch below in quality, in opulence, but still very much up there, was the Lenin Prize. Again, wrapped in real leather, beautiful bas-relief, Lenin's portrait on the inside, name of each person who received the prize, date when the prize was issued. This happens to be a pretty early one from 1967. And name of the particular person who received this particular diploma. And there was a medal issued with it. Interesting thing about this one, if you read what it says, what it was issued for, it says that it was issued in Georgia for introduction and creation and introduction in production of the tea harvesting machine. And few people may know today, but Georgia, Soviet Georgia, used to be a great source of tea leaves.
Wow, tea.
Tea, very popular and very good at some point. Tea came from Georgia. We know that tea comes from India, from other places, from China perhaps, but from Sri Lanka. But some of very good tea was produced in verdant, very agriculturally gifted area of Georgia. And this fellow who created this machine might have inadvertently killed it. Because after they introduced the machine that was cutting off not just the orange peck and not just the best parts of the tea plant, it would cut too much and indiscriminately, maybe stems and leaves that were not so good. Everything, of course, went into production, and the quality of the tea drastically plummeted. And today, it's pretty much over. There is no tea growing in Georgia anymore that we know of.
Fascinating. A tea story behind.
So unfortunately, sometimes the consequences were not what was intended. But in any case, Lenin Prize is important, as we can see the document. Just to compare one more of the award documents for Lenin Prize. And you can see that even the title of hero document, for example, here we have the document of title of hero of socialist labor. It doesn't quite look so lavish by comparison. You can see it's much less expensive looking. It doesn't have the leather cover, for example. And these are documents from about the same era. It does not have as many pages. It's not even as large as the Lenin Prize. Just goes to show how exquisite, how exclusive and important this award was.
Yes.
And if you look at the at what's inside, what it was awarded for, perhaps we will find something interesting here. Look, it says the date. It says that this person was awarded this Lenin Prize, but there's just one person here. And what it says is funny. It says to Viktor Leonov for work in the area of machinery building, or you can instrument building, you can say, or special instrument building. What kind of instruments? It doesn't say.
Doesn't say.
Guess why? It's a military-related project.
Oh,
and
classified.
now, because of all the internet sites that have information published, we know exactly what the project was. We know who the person was,
Yes.
and we know that the project was creation of weapons for Soviet submarines.
Nuclear, huh?
Nuclear and other submarines, a torpedo weapon in particular. And he had a military rank. He was a high-ranking naval officer, but also a researcher, an engineer who worked in this field and was extremely successful. Curiously, it does not say who else received the prize for this same project, and I guarantee you there were other people who were awarded for the same thing, but in the document they were not supposed to say. It was so under wraps, so secretive, that he could have his document and maybe proudly show it to his family members. It wouldn't say what it was, and it also wouldn't say who else was awarded, so no information was ever disclosed. There would be every time a list of names of people awarded with Lenin Prize, published in major newspapers, but there were some so-called closed decrees, or those that were not for publication. And for certainty, this particular person was never on any list because it was a closed publication, closed decree,
I see.
not to be published. So you have some samples of documents that come with Lenin Prize. And to go into specific construction of the medal, as I mentioned before, there are variations of it, and it's important to understand what those variations are. On the front, all Lenin Prizes look exactly the same. All of them were made using the same die. The difference is, of course, in the serial number. Each one was stamped individually. And at some point, it may be possible to find out just by the serial number who was the individual awarded with the medal. I'm sure those archives exist, and someday they may be published, as it happened with Soviet archives before. Here you see the serial number.
Yes.
It can be much lower than what you just saw. For example, here, let's see, let me get the right thing. Here you have the serial number 498, and this medal is different. This is variation 1. If you compare the two, again, medallion is the same, but the suspension is different. Look at how suspension device looks on the earlier medal. It has this very peculiar construction of the catch, so-called cylindrical catch, and it's very sophisticated. You have to pull it, then put the needle inside this cylindrical part, and then push the button to secure the pin in place.
Oh, very nice.
So this was not only expensive to produce, but also pretty unreliable. They probably broke pretty often. And that's why the design was changed at some point, around serial number 850 or so. It became more like this. And why I say more like this, there was a transitional variety that looks very much like this type of suspension, However, the back plate of it is much larger. So it still has some similarity to the first version. However, the catch is already this type of simple catch, comparatively speaking. So it may take a little bit of effort, but you can just push it in there, and it's reliable enough, and it doesn't break as often, as easily. Also much probably cheaper to produce than the variation 1 cylindrical catch.
So how often do we encounter the earlier version?
There
Is that
were
very
only
rare?
850 of the early ones issued, compared to maybe 4,000 in total. So we're talking maybe 1 to 3 of the early version compared to the later version.
Yeah.
And another range of serial numbers from about 850 to 1,000 had this larger backplate, and those are extraordinarily rare. That one, you can compare again, 150 issued, but this is for real connoisseur to look for those. And I've only handled them a couple of times in my life.
Okay.
Extraordinarily rare. And the majority looks like this, still a very scarce and very, very well made award. And very important, not to a regular person, not just for outstanding results of labor like Lenin Prize or any Soviet order could be awarded for that. This was a real breakthrough achievement that would warrant this kind of decoration. And lastly, before we finish this discussion of the medal, I want to touch on the subject of what this medal, what physical characteristics it has, because many collectors may wonder if it's real or not. I took some notes, and I can tell you what the width of the medal should be, and also the weight. And the way we do it is very simple. You take the medal, you measure the width with a micrometer, always in millimeters to make it more precise. Make sure that the eyelet is positioned at the top, not skewed. This way you get reliable reading. You can see it's 27.7 in this particular case. You can also check another one. It will be pretty consistent reading. Make sure you start with 0 and then measure 27.1. So it never deviates very much. 27, I'm sorry, I was incorrect the previous time. So it's, let's see, 27.1 on this one too. Okay. When I looked back at the medals we had in the recent past, all of them were within that range. 27.0, 27.1, 27.2, rarely more than that. I think the highest number I saw was 27.5. So the range, the comfortable range, is 27.0 to 27.5 at the very most, and most of them are around 27.0, 27.1. As far as the weight, and there is a way to weigh a Soviet medal without breaking it, what we do is take a scale.
All right, the handy dandy scale. Yeah.
This one is pretty precise. And we hold medal in such a way that medallion is resting on the scale while suspension is in your hands. And you will know that you reached the right reading when you're holding the connecting link between the suspension and the medal. You're holding it with your fingers. Take some getting used to. And you try not to touch the eyelet. So you have to find just the right position. You know when you reached it, that you reach this position when the reading stops jumping around. So when it becomes stable.
Yes, I see.
So here it's 20.5. And this is about right. Make sure you get it back to 0. And 20.5 is about the average weight or maybe closer to 20.3. Again, it never deviates too drastically. I had few pieces that were 21.0, curiously in about 400 to 500 serial number range, but majority were about 20.3, 20.1, 20.5, 20.6, and so forth. All around 20.3, I would say, would be a median number. Just like this one. So this gives you an idea of what to expect. If you see a very large deviation from this number, you have a reason to be suspicious. I haven't seen good quality fakes of Lenin Prize yet. I'm sure they will appear eventually, if they haven't yet. And I have seen fakes of Stalin Prize already.
Wow.
Those you have to be very careful, yes. Especially look at the suspension device, not just medallion itself. There are some pretty convincing fakes, and you need to know exactly what you're doing here. But with Lenin Prize, you are relatively safe. It's still not that expensive yet to make it worthwhile to copy it from 23 karat gold in as much detail as this medal really has. But I'm sure that's coming. It's inevitable. So you better be prepared and not have the numbers. Numbers do not guarantee you that the medal is real. Fakers know what they're doing. They often use same materials that the original medals were made of. 23 karat gold is not too hard to come by. Oftentimes they use, for example, broken, damaged orders of Lenin.
Wow.
It's the same material. They just get rid of enamel and the bas-relief that's made in platinum, and they use the rest of it to melt it down, and voila. You
That's
have
incredible.
the same exact metal. No analysis of any kind will show you that it's any different. So you cannot tell. And if they have the size right, they will pretty much have the weight correct as well. Now, it may still be a little bit off, and this is the giveaway. If you see that it's considerably off the numbers I just gave you, then probably something is wrong with the medal. You have to be very careful here. And I mentioned the prices. You may want to know what these medals actually sell for.
Okay.
I took some notes from the ones that we sold in the recent past. Current prices, you can look it up on our website. Type 1, for example, we are offering for $5,700. Type 2, $3,500, considerably less. Transitional version, we can only wonder what it can bring today. Again, extremely rare. But in 2017, for example, the price for the Lenin Prize, just regular second version, was $4,200. It was high in 2015 because the prices plummeted as Russian economy shrunk starting from around 2009, 2010, going forward. So at some point it was as much as about $6,000 for the first type, which is not all that different from what it is today. If you look farther back, 2002, 2003, it was under $2,000. So from 2000 in around 2002, 2003 to current prices, which is about $3,500, it's still a pretty reasonable appreciation in my opinion.
Yes, yes.
And what I promised in the beginning, perhaps, it's a curious case of Soviet Lenin Prize awarded for nukes, for building Soviet nukes.
Okay.
Again, let's look at the document as well as the medal, because documents are really telling us the story. This is the small document for Lenin Prize,
Okay.
the one that the person would be carrying inside, in his pocket, if he needed to claim privileges, for example. Not that it was often needed. You see that it has all kinds of stamps, the date of issue, 1963, it says that he was... So this Lenin Prize document is just like any of them. They're only different by year. Serial number, interestingly, serial number is not supposed to match precisely the number of the medal. They were issued in sequence more or less, but not necessarily with the idea that the prize, that the number on the medal would match the number in the certificate. They often come very close. So it's important to know the provenance. In this particular case, we know exactly where this medal and documents came from. So I can absolutely guarantee that they indeed to the same person, even though they're not supposed to exactly match. And who was this person? Well, this is where mystery begins. With the document came patents for invention. So we know he was an inventor of some sort.
Wow.
And of course, we'll need to look inside the document to see. As always, there is a date. There's a nicely embossed Soviet state seal.
Yes.
Lenin's portrait. And remember how the others said what was the project for which it was awarded? Even the secret one,
yes,
for building submarine weapons, would say that it is for special machine building, for design of some sort of apparatus. It didn't explain what. But at least it would say something, maybe in very euphemistic terms.
Yes.
Here, guess what?
Once
There's a
again,
name
Yep.
and nothing
A lot of blank space.
else. Nothing else. Not a thing.
Wow.
And we researched it a little bit, and I think we now know why. When you look at the patents, same story. It says that this person is issued a patent for invention or for major technological improvement,
Yeah.
that he worked at an enterprise, and there's only the number of enterprise. PIA, which stands for почтовый ящик. It means it's a so-called a closed enterprise, or as it was often referred to in the Soviet Union, ящик or box. It is only known by its serial number. Nothing else is known about it. Those were typically enterprises developing top secret weapons. And top secret usually meant nukes.
I see.
Not just weapon of any kind, but nuclear weapons.
Wow.
And now, because of the publication of archives, they can actually tell what those enterprises were in many cases, like this one, box number 2827, box number 150. Those were indeed nuclear research institutes.
Wow. Lenin Prize
Here,
for nuclear research.
it wouldn't say in Lenin Prize document who else worked on the same project. But this one was not for publication, not for showing anybody. And this one actually uttered the names. The name of this particular person, Bronnikov, plus 3 more or 4 more individuals who worked on the same project. Again, all of them worked on nukes. And fortunately, there was a couple of publications on the internet, and some even that were printed in Russia, believe it or not, during the time of relative relaxation of secrecy. This one was published, for example, in 2009, about the work of Research Institute. You will see how many times his name appears. This is the same person that we are dealing with here. And it explains actually what his particular work was. Major contribution to building, to design of thermonuclear weapons.
Oh, that's the rascal.
So this guy received Lenin Prize for thermonuclear warheads aimed at guess what? At guess whom? United States.
Yeah, United States.
These are strategic weapons
Yep.
built by this fellow and rewarded with
There
a
we go.
very significant award
Yes.
of Lenin Prize.
Absolutely
So a
phenomenal.
lot of history here.
Absolutely phenomenal.
It just goes to show the importance of it.
Yes.
And hopefully now collectors in the US will know more about this previously mysterious decoration.
Yes. Exquisite. Outstanding.
Well, thank you. Hopefully I helped to learn something new today.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Very informative, Igor. Thank you very much.
You bet, John.
Oh, my God, Igor, what kind of prize we have this time?
I have a special prize for you.
Okay.
And that is a nice bottle of, guess what? Santa-Steph.
How do you pronounce this?
Santa-Steph.
Santis.
Santa-Steph.
Oh,
Estef.
Santa-Steph. Okay, okay.
Well, you can
Yes.
pronounce it however you want,
Okay.
but it's supposed to be a pretty decent wine. Remember we were talking about this area called Medoc?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is a subdivision, a part of Medoc. It's especially desirable, and it's also possibly the hardest of Medoc wines, meaning it has more tannins, more structure, very masculine, very hard, needs many years in the bottle to fully develop.
Yes.
Hopefully, this one is from 2015, which was a very good year.
Oh my! You know what I remember about 2015 is about some guy coming down some escalator.
Yeah, wasn't that the case? Yeah.
Yeah.
And strangely enough, it was also an excellent year for winemaker.
No kidding! What
Fantastic
a
year.
coincidence!
Yeah.
What a coincidence!
You know, it's like all the stars aligned.
Yes, the escalator year.
Yeah.
And then the wines got good.
Yeah, yeah. Remember how everybody laughed at him?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anyhow, this wine
Mm-hmm.
is from the northern and westernmost appellation of the left bank. Remember we discussed the two rivers, Dordogne, Garonne, and then Gironde, that flows into the Atlantic. And right along the bank, that would be southern bank of Gironde, there are several appellations of Medoc area that are considered the best of the best.
Wow.
Among them, Pauillac, and another one is Margaux. This one is the closest to the Atlantic Ocean.
Wow.
That's still very good, and closest to the river, which is important because that's where the slopes with best exposure and best drainage and best of everything are. And it's called Santa-Steph. And you will be the judge of how good or terrible this wine is. Let's see if the cork is cooperating. And it's not. So what we'll do is we will try and
Yes, that's an interesting technique.
do some.
There's always a way to recover.
It's sometimes and sometimes not. Sometimes you have to actually butcher it,
That's right. That's
and
right.
then you have to decant it and sift
Yes,
it through.
yes, yes. But at least the cork is long in length, so it's recoverable, so to speak.
Yeah, it's not in best condition. The cork is.
Yes, yes.
So I gets me a little.
And it
bit.
happens during wine, right? Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Fortunately,
Wine,
it's crumbling. All right.
Well, a corkscrew seems long enough to do the job.
Let's see if it can do it.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't want to push it down.
yeah. But this is a fascinating situation. Obviously, this is unscripted, and we did not pick this particular bottle for its defective cork. But
Well, it's not defective that it would be rotten. It's just too dry.
oh, too dry, right?
And that's bad too,
I see.
because it could potentially let the air to flow freely into the bottle, and that would eventually spoil the wine, especially when it's from.
Gotcha. So we got to
9 years
remove
ago.
it gingerly. Yes, yes.
We have to be very
With proper
careful
technique.
here. We don't want to let pieces of cork to get into the wine, into the bottle.
Yes.
So you see this
Oh, yes,
little
yes.
bits and pieces?
That's right.
Better
That's right.
clean it off.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, we don't want to have the cork. Wow, wow.
Trick.
Now that's expertise.
Cork
That
is not so.
really
No,
expertise.
I ruined it to begin with. But
Wait, you deliberately sabotaged your own corking?
no, I didn't want to.
uncorking?
I was just a klutz.
Okay.
But
Well,
I
you're
think
a
it's,
humble man.
I think it's still okay.
Yeah, yeah. Not too much. I'm Asian.
Oh, Asian schmasian. What Asian? Everybody claims he's Asian. Get some kind of benefits.
That's right. Yes.
Okay. Let's see. No cork in the wine. That's good.
Oh Lord.
The depth of it, huh?
No, that's the word.
The depth.
Depth. Yes. Yes.
I think it's fantastic.
That's the definition of depth. Wow. If only our audience in YouTube Wonderland, right, can smell this.
Yeah.
And we're just
I
describing the
don't
word
know,
depth. Like, what
science
do you mean
hasn't
depth?
gotten that far yet.
That's right.
Fortunately.
One day there'll be a smell meter, right? You can just go up to your screen and smell it. Yes, it is stronger than others that I've had already.
It's, by the way, very structured.
That's the word, structured?
Structured, yeah.
Okay.
Lots of Cabernet Sauvignon. I bet you it has probably at least 50-60% of Cabernet. If it says somewhere, it may or may not. And by the way, they are not supposed to put it on the label in France. It's only the American importers that put their own label on the back of the bottle. But a good French wine won't say what it's made of. If it's an appellation wine, meaning it has special appellation that's protected by law. You cannot call any other wine this way. And if it's not according to specifications, to regulations, you cannot call it that either. So it has to come from a specific area and done as a specific way. It has to have a certain percentage of this and certain percentage of that.
Yeah.
It's very strictly regulated.
Oh, so hold the boat. So what you're saying is that if I bought this bottle in France,
It would not say what it's made of.
so it won't have a rear label.
No.
It would just have a front label.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it does not say
trivia.
Now the rest depends on the importer.
Yeah.
So this is made for American consumers.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yeah, you bought this in America.
obviously. How else? Now, interestingly enough, I did bring in the past some wine from France. But
Directly.
There's only very little you can bring. You can use an importer to buy French wine directly in France, and then they import it. They clear the customs and so forth.
Yeah.
But it's a kind of involved process. But yes, it certainly can be done.
Wow, fantastic.
There's one place that I constantly buy from it that I would very much recommend, and I'll tell you how to contact them. No, it doesn't say, but I bet you it's more than 50% Cabernet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the depth, the structure. Okay. Now the taste.
Yeah, it's right. Another 5 or 10 years and it would be better, but it's already good.
5 or 10 years more, it will be better.
Oh yeah.
It's already
15 years. It can stand for a long time.
Now. Yeah. Okay.
It probably will take another 15 years to fully reach its potential.
Right. Wow. This is interesting. Very interesting.
But it's already a very good drinkable wine.
Yeah. It's already a prized wine, so to speak. Yes.
Saint-Estèphe is Médoc is generally good. Haute Médoc is even better. But then when you get to specific places like Saint-Estèphe, Pauillac, it gets fantastic.
Wow. And of course, I got to ask you, because I'm a budget conscious guy. If I walk into a liquor store, what's it going to set me back?
You have to be careful here. You don't want to buy this from a liquor store. Generally speaking, you do want to look for bargains online.
Okay,
I would not recommend
this you recommend?
I recommend looking for bargains from web sources.
Yes.
And I would guesstimate about, see, if it were in a liquor store, easily $40.
Easily, okay.
Or maybe more.
That's still reasonable.
It's a good year. Yeah, it's
still
not terribly
reasonable.
bad.
Still reasonable.
In a restaurant, they'll probably charge you 100 or more.
They'll triple it easily.
Yeah, easily.
Easily. Chateau.
But you don't often find the right year in a store.
Oh.
So 2015, you want to buy it, maybe hold it in your cellar on your wine cooler for a few years, then enjoy it.
Get a case of this.
Get a case, but make sure to store it correctly. Somewhere, it doesn't have to be a specific temperature. This is a myth that it has to be specific. Yes, ideally, but it doesn't have to. It has to have consistency. It has to be consistent temperature and consistent humidity. So this is what wine cellars do. They just keep temperature even.
Oh, I see. That is the trick. Not necessarily.
Of course, if it's very hot, it will ruin the wine.
Okay.
It starts like cooking.
So you just want
and it will age much faster in a warm environment. But if it goes up and down,
no good.
Then it will spoil.
No good.
Probably spoil.
Wow, you can actually spoil a wine by keep adjusting the temperature up and down.
Yeah. You just want wine likes stability.
Fascinating. How many different wines would you estimate that you have tasted in your lifetime?
I don't know. Never ask a question.
I mean, just a random guess. Over 100?
Over 100 for sure.
Over 500? Possibly?
Possibly over 500.
Yeah, possibly. Right. That's a lot of wine. That's a lot of wine. Yeah. Well, I've always known you for being a wine connoisseur. Seriously.
I'm not a
And this is
serious-
not just for YouTube promotion.
This is so amateur.
Well, you're a humble man. You're a humble man.
No, I'm just realistic. There are
Yes,
people
yes.
who dedicate their life to.
Wow. Well, thank you, though. I feel I don't deserve this prize, but
Oh, you bet.
all the prize
Always my
goes to
pleasure.
yes. Thank you. CollectRussia.com, and cheers to warriors past and present. Yes.
Let's drink to that.
Let's drink to that. And no more wars. No more wars.
Obviously.
Unless we
Unless
need
they're
to.
necessary.
Yeah, unless they're necessary. Ah. Oh. Excellent. Bottoms up. How they say? Das Vidanya? Oh, no, wait a minute. You're not bottoms up.
I'm not yet.
Oh, try to go.
Look who's Asian now.
I know.
Me.
Whew, that was fantastic. Oh, thank you very much, Igor.
You bet.
Das
My
Vidanya.
pleasure. My pleasure.